My name is Kayla Martinez. I was 56 years old the day I learned how quickly love can curdle into control and how easily a family can become a weapon. It happened on my front lawn. I had been watering my rose bushes, the ones I'd planted after my husband passed, because routines help grief stay quiet. The sun was warm, the street calm, a normal Wednesday, the kind you trust. Then I heard tires screech. A car door slammed so hard it echoed. Urgent footsteps ran up my driveway. "Mom!" The voice was barely a voice, thin, fractured. I turned. My daughter Natalie was stumbling toward me, one hand pressed tight against her ribs. Her cream-colored sweater was soaked through with dark red, blooming outward like something alive. "Natalie, oh my God." I dropped the hose. It kept spraying, forgotten, as I ran to her. She collapsed into my arms, dead weight, knees buckling like they'd given up first. "I shouldn't have come here," she gasped, "but I had nowhere else." Her breath rattled. Her skin was cold. "Let me see," I said, already shaking. "Baby, let me see." She resisted at first, fingers clenched like she was holding herself together by force alone. When I finally eased her hand away, my stomach turned. A deep, angry gash ran along her side, not shallow, not accidental, still bleeding. "This needs the ER," I said immediately. "Right now." "No." She grabbed my wrist with startling strength. "No hospitals. Please. He'll find me there. He always does." My heart stuttered. "He?" I asked, though I already knew. "You mean Brandon?" She didn't answer right away. Tears slid down her face, cutting paths through dried blood I hadn't noticed before. "He lost his temper," she whispered. "It happened fast." Lost his temper. The phrase landed heavy, familiar, dangerous. "Natalie," I said carefully, forcing calm, "your husband stabbed you." She flinched like I'd struck her. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." That was when I knew. Not suspected. Knew. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was violence. Before I could say anything else, a voice called out from the neighboring yard. "Kayla, everything all right?" Gloria, my neighbor, was already crossing the grass, gloves still on her hands. She stopped short when she saw Natalie. "Sweet Jesus," she breathed. "What happened?" Natalie straightened instantly, pain vanishing behind practiced composure. "Kitchen accident," she said quickly. "I'm fine." Gloria looked at me, really looked. I shook my head once. "Let's get her inside," Gloria said firmly. "Now." Inside my living room, Gloria eased Natalie onto the couch while I grabbed towels and my first aid kit. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. "This needs stitches," Gloria said after one look, "and documentation." She met Natalie's eyes. "I was a trauma nurse for 20 years. I need the truth." Natalie stared at the floor. "His parents were visiting," she said finally. "I made a comment about his job search. He's been unemployed 4 months." My jaw clenched. "He said I embarrassed him, that I needed to learn respect." The word felt rehearsed. "After they went to bed," Natalie continued, voice barely audible, "he picked up the knife." The room went silent. "And his parents?" Gloria asked quietly. "They came downstairs when I screamed." Natalie's body trembled. "His mother said maybe this would teach me to watch my tone." Something inside me snapped clean in half. Her phone buzzed on the couch. Again. I picked it up. 15 missed calls. Text after text. "Stop being dramatic. Come home. There will be consequences." I looked at my daughter, really looked, and saw fear layered under years of training. "Gloria," I said, my voice steady despite everything, "can you stay with her?" She nodded. I stepped into the kitchen and called my sister. "Rachel," I said when she answered, "he stabbed her." Silence. Then, "I'm on my way." When I returned, Natalie looked at me, eyes wide. "I don't have anywhere else," she whispered. "Everything's tied to him." I sat beside her and took her hand. "You're home," I said, "and this ends now." Outside, her car sat crooked at the curb, the driver's door still open, like she'd never meant to leave for long, and somehow knew she had to. The waiting was the hardest part. Natalie lay on my couch, propped carefully with pillows, Gloria sitting beside her like a quiet guard. Every few minutes, Natalie flinched, not from the pain in her side, but from the memory replaying behind her eyes. I recognized that look. It was the look of someone rehearsing excuses before anyone even accused them. I busied myself in the kitchen, wiping down a counter that was already clean, my thoughts spiraling. My daughter had been stabbed. By her husband. And she was still worried about his reaction. When Rachel arrived 25 minutes later, she didn't knock. She pushed through the front door like a storm, dark hair pulled back, eyes already scanning the room for damage. "Oh my God," she breathed when she saw Natalie. "Nat." Natalie tried to smile. It came out crooked. I'm okay, she said automatically. Rachel didn't respond. She crouched in front of her instead, gentle but unyielding. Tell me everything, she said, from the beginning, slowly. Natalie swallowed. Brandon's parents arrived last Sunday, she began. His mom, Patricia, kept making comments about the house, about how I cooked, about how Brandon shouldn't be stressed about money if I knew how to budget better. My hands curled into fists. I told him later it bothered me, Natalie continued. He said I was being sensitive, that his mom was just traditional. Rachel nodded once, not surprised. Then yesterday, Natalie said, voice thinning, I asked him, just asked, if he'd heard back from any of the companies he applied to. His dad laughed, said maybe I should stop nagging and let Brandon be a man. Gloria let out a quiet, furious breath. After dinner, Natalie said, Brandon followed me into the kitchen, said I humiliated him, said I acted like I was better than him because I still had a job. You did nothing wrong, I said sharply. She shook her head. I said I was tired of walking on eggshells, that I missed my job, that I felt invisible. Rachel's eyes flicked to me. Job? That's when he picked up the knife, Natalie whispered. I thought he was just trying to scare me. Her fingers twisted together. He said if I kept pushing, I'd learn what happens to wives who don't respect their husbands. My stomach dropped. And his parents? Rachel asked quietly. Natalie closed her eyes. They watched, she said. His mom didn't even yell. She just crossed her arms and said maybe discipline would finally fix my attitude. I felt heat rush to my face so fast it made me dizzy. Rachel stood abruptly and walked into my kitchen, pressing her palms against the counter like she needed something solid to keep her upright. This is aggravated assault, she said flatly, and long-term coercive control. Natalie's eyes filled with panic. No, she said quickly. Please don't say that. You don't understand how powerful they are. His dad sits on the city council, Rachel finished. I know. Natalie stared at her. How? Because I've already pulled his file, Rachel said, and because men like that always think they're untouchable. Natalie's phone buzzed again. She recoiled like it burned. I picked it up before she could stop me. Come home now, you're embarrassing me. This ends tonight. Has he ever hurt you before? I asked softly. Natalie hesitated. Not like this, she said, but other things. Rachel returned, eyes sharp. What other things? He tracks my phone, Natalie admitted. He has all my passwords. Email, social, bank. My breath caught. He made me quit my job 3 months ago, she continued. Said my boss disrespected him at the holiday party. Said my male coworkers looked at me wrong. That's isolation, Gloria said firmly. Classic. Natalie nodded, tears spilling now. He said Amber was trying to turn me against him, she whispered. So I stopped answering her calls. Then my college friends. Then it was just him and his parents. I pulled her into a careful hug. You were never weak, I murmured. You were trained. The doorbell rang. Natalie froze. I'll handle it, I said. Through the peephole, I saw Patricia Crawford, arms crossed, sunglasses on, standing on my porch like she owned it. I opened the door without stepping aside. Where is she? Patricia demanded. This has gone far enough. She's staying here, I said. Patricia scoffed. She's being dramatic. Brandon told me everything. Your son stabbed my daughter. Patricia waved a manicured hand. It was a kitchen accident. These things happen when wives provoke. Gloria appeared beside me. I've treated the wound, she said calmly. It was no accident. Patricia's lips thinned. We believe in traditional marriage, she said coolly. Sometimes men need to assert authority. Get off my property, I said, shaking. This won't end well, Patricia replied, lowering her sunglasses. You're isolating her from the only family that provides for her. Rachel stepped forward. She has legal counsel now, she said, and witnesses. Patricia's smile turned sharp. You're nothing without us, she said. Natalie will come crawling back. Leave, I said, before I call the police. She lingered a second longer, then turned. I warned you. I shut the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. Behind me, Natalie was crying, but her shoulders were straighter now. She talks about me like I'm property, she whispered. Rachel knelt in front of her. That's because they believe you are, she said gently, and we're going to prove them wrong. Natalie nodded slowly. I'm scared, she said, but I can't go back. Rachel took out her phone. Then we don't let you, she said, and we start building a record they can't erase. Outside, sirens sounded faintly in the distance. For the first time since Natalie collapsed on my lawn, I felt something other than terror. Purpose. Rachel didn't waste time. She sat at my dining table with her laptop open, legal pad beside her, pen moving fast and precise. Gloria remained with Natalie on the couch, her presence steady, grounding. Natalie looked smaller there than she ever had before, wrapped in one of my old cardigans, the bandage stark against her skin. "First," Rachel said, not looking up, "we document everything." She turned the screen toward Natalie. "Photos, multiple angles, time-stamped. Gloria, I'll need your medical statement. Kayla, you're a witness to her condition and her arrival." Natalie swallowed hard. "Do I have to do this tonight?" she asked quietly. Rachel finally looked at her. "I won't force you," she said, "but the longer we wait, the more room they have to rewrite what happened." That word, rewrite, seemed to hit Natalie harder than anything else. "That's what they always do," she murmured. "They tell me I remember things wrong." I sat beside her and took her hand. "You remember exactly right," I said, "and this time it's written down." Natalie nodded. The knock came just after 9. Not a doorbell this time. A knock, sharp, deliberate. Every muscle in Natalie's body locked. Rachel closed her laptop slowly. "Stay seated," she said to Natalie, then to me. "Do not let them inside." Them. I already knew. I opened the door and found Brandon standing there. He looked calm. Too calm. Clean jacket. Hands in his pockets. The man who always knew how to perform when it mattered. "Kayla," he said evenly, "we need to talk." "You need to leave," I replied. He leaned slightly forward, eyes flicking past me into the house. "Natalie's upset," he said. "She's misinterpreting what happened." "Misinterpreting a stab wound?" His jaw tightened. "She moved," he said. "I was holding the knife. It was an accident." Rachel stepped into view behind me. "Are you admitting you were holding a knife during a domestic dispute?" she asked calmly. Brandon's eyes sharpened. "And you are?" "Rachel Martinez," she said. "Attorney, and this conversation is being recorded." He exhaled slowly, visibly adjusting. "This is private," he said. "Family business." "Felonies aren't private," Rachel replied. He turned back to me. "I want to see my wife." "No," I said. A pause. Then his voice dropped, controlled, dangerous. "You're making this worse for her." Natalie's voice cut through the room. "I'm right here." She stood, trembling but upright, stepping into view. Brandon's expression softened instantly. "Baby," he said. "Please, let's talk alone." "No," Natalie said. He took a step forward. Rachel moved immediately, placing herself between them. "You don't come closer," she warned. Brandon scoffed. "You've poisoned her against her own family." "You stabbed her," Rachel said. Silence. Then Brandon laughed quietly. "You think this ends well?" he asked. "My parents have already spoken to the police chief." Rachel smiled thinly. "Good," she said. "Then they'll be very familiar with the evidence." Natalie looked at him, really looked. "You didn't even ask if I was okay," she said softly. His mask cracked for just a second. "Come home," he said. "We can fix this." "You took my money," she replied. "My job, my friends. I protected you. You controlled me." Another step forward, Gloria stood. "That's far enough," she said. Brandon's eyes flicked to Rai. "And who are you supposed to be?" "Someone who will testify," Gloria said, under oath. His gaze returned to Natalie, hard now. "If you do this," he said quietly, "you'll regret it." That was when Rachel spoke again. "That sounded like a threat," she said. "Thank you for that." Brandon stared at her, then at Natalie. "This is your last chance," he said. Natalie's voice shook, but it didn't waver. "I'm filing for a restraining order," she said, "and divorce." The word hung heavy. Brandon went very still. Then his face changed completely. "You're nothing without me," he said flatly. Rachel stepped aside. "And you're done," she replied. Brandon turned sharply and left. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. Not one officer. 3. Because Rachel had already called. Because Gloria had already sent her statement. Because the recording was already backed up. Detective Linda Chambers introduced herself calmly, professionally, like she'd walked into scenes like this 1,000 times before. She spoke to Natalie gently, explaining every step, every option. Natalie listened. Then she nodded. "Yes," she said, "I want to press charges." It happened fast after that. Brandon was arrested that night. Patricia arrived screaming at the station. Threatening lawsuits, names, connections. None of it mattered. Evidence stacked higher than arrogance. Over the next weeks, everything tried to unravel. Lawyers painted Natalie as unstable, as vindictive, as emotional. They said Brandon was under stress, that he'd lost his job, that Natalie had provoked him. They said the wound was exaggerated. They said she was confused. But they couldn't erase bank statements, or messages, or the recording of Patricia's voice saying discipline like it was scripture. 3 weeks later, Brandon violated the restraining order. At 2 in the morning. He stood on my lawn, shouting Natalie's name, demanding she come outside. My security camera caught every second. That footage changed everything. 6 months later, we sat in the courtroom. Natalie's hands shook as she stood, but her voice was clear. When the sentence came, 2 years jail, probation, extended restraining order, Brandon looked genuinely shocked, as if consequences were something that happened to other people. Outside the courthouse, Patricia hissed curses. "You've destroyed our family." Natalie looked at her. "No," she said, "I escaped it." That night, we sat together at my kitchen table, exhausted, relieved, alive. "I didn't know I could survive this," Natalie whispered. I reached for her hand. "You weren't supposed to survive it alone," I said. And for the first time since the blood on my lawn, I believed that we had truly turned the page. The trial didn't begin with drama. It began with paperwork. Stacks of it. Forms that reduced my daughter's pain into clinical language. Injury, weapon, incident. Natalie filled them out at my dining table, her handwriting careful, controlled, like if she stayed neat enough, nothing could spill out. But things always spill. The Crawford family made sure of that. They hired 3 attorneys. Not because they needed them, but because they wanted to overwhelm. Every motion they filed felt designed to exhaust Natalie into silence. They requested psychological evaluations, financial records, therapy notes. They suggested, quietly at first, then openly, that Natalie was unstable. "That's how they do it," Denise explained one afternoon, seated across from Natalie in my living room. "They don't deny the harm. They reframe the victim." Natalie nodded slowly. "They already taught me how," she said. "I spent years explaining his behavior to myself." The first hearing was procedural, short, cold. Brandon sat at the defense table in a tailored suit, hair neatly styled, posture respectful. The picture of restraint. Patricia sat behind him, dabbing at her eyes, whispering loudly enough for anyone nearby to hear. "We raised him better than this." I watched Natalie's jaw tighten. Rachel leaned in. "Eyes forward," she murmured. "Let them perform." The prosecution laid out the facts. Medical testimony, photos, text messages, the recording. When Gloria took the stand, her voice was calm, unshakable. "I have treated accidental wounds for decades," she said. "This was not one." The defense attorney tried to shake her. "Isn't it possible the victim moved suddenly?" Gloria didn't blink. The force required to produce that injury would not come from movement alone. Natalie squeezed my hand so tightly it hurt. Then came the hardest part, Natalie testified. She walked to the stand slowly, shoulders back, eyes forward. She didn't cry. She spoke plainly. About the isolation, the finances, the fear. About how love slowly became surveillance. About how discipline was used like justification. When the defense suggested she exaggerated, she met their gaze. "If I were exaggerating," she said evenly, "I wouldn't still be afraid." The courtroom was silent. Brandon stared at the table. The day the verdict came, Patricia arrived dressed in black, like she was attending a funeral. In a way, she was. "Mr. Crawford," Judge Henderson said, voice steady, "you have been found guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon." Brandon's face drained of color. The sentence followed. 2 years county jail. 3 years probation. 5-year restraining order. Each word landed with finality. Natalie didn't react at first. Then she exhaled. Outside the courthouse, the Crawfords intercepted us. Patricia stepped forward, voice shaking with fury. "You destroyed him." Natalie looked at her calmly. "He destroyed himself." Howard Crawford scoffed. "You'll regret this," he said. "We have long memories." Detective Chambers stepped closer. "Threatening a victim post-conviction is unwise," she said quietly. Patricia's mouth tightened. "You could still fix this," she said to Natalie. "Tell the judge you overreacted." Natalie shook her head. "I don't fix men who break me," she said. That was the last time she spoke to them. The weeks that followed were strange, quiet. Natalie moved into a small apartment across town. She chose it herself, paid for it herself. The first night she slept there, she called me. "I didn't realize how loud my thoughts were," she said, "without him." She started therapy twice a week. She went back to her old design firm. Her boss hugged her when she walked in. "We saved your desk," he said. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching the sun dip low, Natalie's phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You think this is over?" Natalie didn't panic. She took a screenshot, sent it to Detective Chambers, then deleted the message. "I don't owe fear my attention anymore," she said quietly. That night, we cooked dinner together. Simple food, familiar music. Healing didn't feel dramatic. It felt steady, like breath returning. Survival doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with a clear line in the sand or a triumphant soundtrack swelling in the background. It comes quietly, in moments so ordinary you almost miss them. Like Natalie calling me one Tuesday morning to ask if I had her grandmother's old soup pot. "I want to make something that takes time," she said. "Something I can't rush." I smiled into the phone. "Top shelf left," I told her. "Bring it back when you're done." She did, clean, wrapped carefully, like it mattered. That was how I knew she was really coming back to herself. The Crawford family didn't disappear after the trial. They just changed strategies. First came the whispers. Natalie's old friends, people she hadn't spoken to in years, started hearing stories. That she'd exaggerated, that she'd ruined a good man's life, that she was unstable, emotional, vindictive. Then came the emails. Anonymous, vague, worded just carefully enough to sound concerned instead of threatening. "We hope you're getting the help you need." Some people struggle to tell the difference between memory and emotion. Natalie forwarded every one of them to Detective Chambers without comment. "I don't need to explain myself anymore," she said simply. She focused instead on rebuilding. She went to therapy twice a week without fail, not just to talk about Brandon, but to talk about herself, her childhood, her patterns, the places where she'd learned to equate love with endurance. One evening, she came over and sat at my kitchen table, staring at nothing. "I thought strength meant staying," she said quietly. "I didn't know it could also mean leaving." I poured her tea. "Strength adapts," I said. "It learns." She nodded. 2 months later, she enrolled in an advanced design certification program, the same one Brandon had mocked as a waste of money. When she told Denise, the woman grinned. "Abusers hate education," she said. "It gives people language." Natalie thrived. Her work came back sharper, more confident. She stopped apologizing before speaking, stopped shrinking her ideas to make room for others. One afternoon, she sent me a photo of her desk at the firm. A small plant sat in the corner. "It's still alive," she texted. "I think that's a good sign." It was. The real shift came 3 months after the sentencing. Natalie received an email from a woman named Claire. She didn't know her. Claire explained that she'd been married to Brandon's cousin years earlier, that the family had convinced her not to press charges when things turned violent, that she'd been told she was overreacting, that seeing Natalie testify, stand firm, had finally given her the courage to leave. Natalie read the email 3 times. Then she cried. Not the quiet, ashamed tears I'd seen so often before. These were different. "They told me I was alone," she said later, voice thick. "But I wasn't. I just couldn't see it yet." That was when Natalie suggested Sunday dinners. Not just for us, for others. The first one was small. Natalie, me, Gloria, Denise. Rachel stopped by late with a bottle of wine. The second week, Natalie brought a woman from her therapy group, shy, nervous, bruises still faintly yellowed along her arm. We didn't ask questions. We passed dishes, laughed, let silence be safe. The table slowly grew. One Sunday evening, as the sun dipped low and the kitchen filled with voices, Rachel raised her glass. "To justice," she said. "To new beginnings," Gloria added. Natalie hesitated, then spoke. "To finding my voice," she said softly. I watched her then. Really watched her. Not the frightened woman who had collapsed bleeding on my lawn. Not the hollow version who'd believed love meant obedience. But this woman. Grounded, present, alive. Later that night, after everyone left, Natalie lingered. "Mom," she said, standing in the doorway. "Thank you for not telling me to work it out." I swallowed. "Some lines," I said, "can't be uncrossed." She hugged me tight. "I'm proud of myself," she whispered. "I didn't think I'd ever say that." Neither had I. After she left, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "This isn't over. The Crawford family takes care of its own. Watch your back." I stared at the screen. Then I took a screenshot. Sent it to Detective Chambers with a single line, adding this to the file. I didn't feel fear. I felt tired. Some people never learn. They don't change. They just persist. But persistence works both ways. The next morning, I watered my rose bushes again. The same ones from that terrible day. They were blooming, healthy, bright, despite everything that had happened around them. Natalie came over that afternoon with groceries and laughter. She told me about a client who'd complimented her work, about a book she was reading, about a woman from therapy who needed help finding a lawyer. "The cycle continues," she said thoughtfully, "but this time, we're breaking it." I nodded. That made all the difference.